Hello and welcome to SweetSpotDFS. It's your DFS preview for the 2021 Wyndham Championship. Now, if you want to see what I'll be covering in this video, I have timestamps in the description below. Those timestamps can also be found on YouTube's progress bar. So all you have to do is hover over the progress bar and you will find them there. But basically, this video, it's meant to give you all of the necessary information you need to know before building your DFS lineups. And although I will be using DraftKings data, you can use the information learned here on your FanDuel lineups or your Yahoo lineups or any other fantasy site, because really 99% of the information here is just general fantasy information. So don't be discouraged with the DraftKings salaries. Another little piece of information I want to provide that I rarely ever do, I don't think I ever have, but it's my schedule. So Mondays I like to do preview videos. Tuesdays I like to do strategy videos, which grabs the general information we learn in the previews and then builds narrow player pools, small player pools with that information. And then Wednesdays, I like to do my PGA Prize Picks plays of the week, which highlights my favorite Prize Picks plays as well as my favorite PGA DFS plays. Which reminds me, if you have not yet signed up for Prize Picks yet, it's a fun way to play fantasy sports. I have a link in the description below. Just follow that link to the sign up page. It should already have the Sweet Spot referral code in there. That'll give you a deposit match up to $100. So again, fun way to play, and that's my schedule. So with all that being said, let's go ahead, let's get into this thing. Let's start it off with the tournament fact sheets. And this is a great place to start. Gives us a solid understanding of how this tournament is going to be set up. Really gives you the yardage, par, course statistics, even the grass stats, and architect, because those are all data points you can research. So here we are, Sedgefield Country Club. My data goes back to 2013. Each of those years, this tournament has been played at Sedgefield. I think it even goes further back than that. So it's definitely a golf course where you can find a lot of course data, a lot of course history information, I should say. And I highly suggest you do so because it's a smart way to go about it. We have a par 70, 35s on both nines, 7,100 yards. That's not really long. I feel like that's maybe like 50 to 100 yards under the average that we usually see on par 70s. So it's a little on the short side, but not by much. It's still a shorter track. Let's put it that way. You have 6,000 square feet average green size, which is basically average on tour. I like to look at this 6 holes where water is in play. I don't think when I did the course breakdown, I saw that. I think I saw like 3 or 4 holes where water is truly in play, but I could be wrong on that. I don't think I am. I think it's lower than this. And usually when we see this number, when we do the course breakdowns, it really isn't in play. Like, I think how the GCSAA does this, they just see water within the bounds of the hole and determines that's in play. But when there's water just outside of a tee box, that's really not in play. Like, sure, a pro could top it into the water and have to deal with a penalty stroke, but that's realistically not in play. So like I said, I think it's around 4 holes where it's actually in play, but we'll look at a course breakdown to determine that even more. We are on Champion Bermuda grass. I can't tell you the different types of strains, like what they do when it comes to Bermuda. Like, you have Tiff Dwarf, you have Tiff Eagle, you have Champion. I think there's a Tiff Sport Bermuda grass. And, maybe by the next time I do one of these, I'll educate myself on the different strains of those Bermuda grasses. But either way, if you're going to do research, your specific research would be Champion Bermuda. Your general research would just be all of the Bermuda grasses. Because really, I don't know if any of us in the industry knows the different types of strains. And I don't think I'd really get that caught up in it. Bermuda acts very similar to all Bermudas. Very grainy. You have to read the grain all around the golf course. So I think general Bermuda is going to be good. There's some additional notes here if you guys want to learn about this. I'm not going to talk about any of it. You guys can pause it and then read. The course architect, Donald Ross, which obviously the tour plays a lot of Donald Ross golf. I shouldn't say a lot. A handful, couple, whatever, somewhere between 2 and 5, I think, on tour. So Definitely could use the architect as your another piece of information to research. I don't know how Donald Ross builds his golf courses. I feel like, yeah, I'm mixing up with Tom Fazio. I was just about to say, because I know Fazio likes to build his greens from back to front, so everything slopes to the front. I don't know what Ross does. So maybe if you guys know, leave it in the comment section. That way we all can learn from it. But yeah, I don't think it's really that big of a deal. It's still another data point that you can research. And then I don't think there's anything else we need to talk about when it comes to this. Let's go ahead and get right into weather. I like to use weather.com as a quick tell of what the weather forecast looks like. And it's really just giving you guys an idea of what to expect. This is by no means, the end all, I shouldn't say end all be all. The final forecast, let's put it that way. I always suggest you guys Wednesday nights look at the forecast, and if you really want to know a better way to look at this, go to windfinder.com, look in the Greensboro area, and try to find where the windier days and times are going to be when it comes to Thursday, Friday's rounds, because that's the biggest tell. Last week at the WGC FedEx St. Jude, there was very little wind. And the forecasted score, or what I kind of forecasted the winning score to be at 13 under, was beat pretty considerably. Like, if it wasn't for Harris English's meltdown, that winning score would have been 20 under. Instead, it was 16 under, but it was way higher than I had predicted. So either way, when we look at the wind here, we're looking at nearly the same conditions we saw last week. It's like 5 to 10 miles an hour, barely anything. Sure, Saturday we have a chance of rain, but we're only caring about Thursday, Friday. We need to make the cut because this is a full field event. If I failed to mention that before, my bad. Full field event, 156 golfers. There will be a cut. Remember, it's top 65 in ties. So yeah, I think it's very important to understand what the weather's going to be doing on Thursday and Friday and plan accordingly. Build your lineups accordingly. So here's your quick weather rundown. Again, I always suggest you guys look Wednesday night just to double check that nothing crazy is happening or there isn't like a huge advantage to one split or not. From here, let's just go ahead and get right into kind of past results and a winning target score. And we'll look at average cut scores as well. So as we look at this, not only do I want to look at the winner, but I want to look at second and third place, because that's usually a good tell of what you need to shoot in order to win, which obviously makes sense, right? But in a lot of cases I've seen, the reason I say that, a lot of cases that I've seen, the winners sometimes win by 3 or 4 shots over second and third place. So looking at the winning score sometimes isn't fair, because if a guy gets on a heater, then obviously they're going to obliterate the field. But usually second and third place are really close to the pack. So I think that's a really good way to look at it too. So anyways, as we look at this, we see Jim Herman wins it at 21 under. Second place is 20. 2019, 22 wins. Second place is 21. 2018, 21 wins. Second place is 18. I'm not going to talk about all these, but you guys can see we're looking at kind of a target score around probably 22 under, 21, 22 under. We do see in like 2013, 2014, and 2015 scores that are under 20. Like we have 17 under in 2015, 17 under in 2014, and 14 under in 2013. This all could be due to weather on some of those days, causing the course to play a little tougher. I don't have those statistics with me. I don't have those anecdotes, I guess we could call them, to go along with this, but that's kind of what my guess would be. We don't see anything lower than 14 under, and we don't see anything higher than 22 under. Yeah, 22 under. So I'm really kind of predicting a winning score of 20 under. And I think second place, we want to definitely get to 18 under. So anything north of 18. So 18 to 21 is where I'm going to put that winning score in. So with that being said, this is a par 70, pile up all of your birdie makers. All of those guys that are good at going low. Embrace volatility with some of these guys, because you will see 8, 9, Brad Snedeker shot a 59 here before. I think we're going to see a lot of low scores. It's not going to be consistent. Like, we're not going to have 5 under, 5 under, 5 under, 5 under. We'll probably have like 8 under one day, 3 under the next, 6 under the next, and then 7 under on Sunday. Something like that. It'll be some weird up and down scoring process. But with that being said, definitely get your guys who can score really low here. I definitely want to look at my course history guys, but I also just want to look at fantasy scoring in general. Stockpile on those that can score low. So that's what we have with the results. And let's go down to the cut just to see what the cut is usually. In 2020, it was 3 under par. So obviously it's 1 better than what you see with the cut. So 3 under. We have 4 under in 2019, 3 under in 2018, 3 under in 2017. So I think it's clear. We're going to want 3 under or better is going to be our cut score. So again, if I was to actually research data on that, what I would be looking at is when the cut score is 3 under or better, filter out by tournaments with golfers in the field this week. So just to see what their average finishing position is, or the likelihood that they make a cut, that kind of stuff, that should help you out a lot this week. Okay, let's go ahead and go into a course breakdown. Basically what I like to do, I like to go over basically a satellite image or sometimes a yardage book that I found online, look at the layout of the golf course and determine what shot shape matters, either off the tee or on approach. And I'll put it in these 2 columns here. I'll also provide a little description of each of the holes here, but I never really read these out loud. I allow you guys to pause the video and read them yourself. So obviously you can read that front 9. I'll scroll down to the back 9, read these. I'm more interested in the little summary box here. So as you can see, no shot shape really matters. We have 0 holes where a draw off the tee matters and 0 holes where a draw on approach matters. We have 1 hole where a fade off the tee matters and 2 holes where a fade on approach matters. Now, when we look at the results of, each year that this has been played, can't really tell you what Herman plays, but Horschel draws the golf ball. Simpson draws the golf ball. Snedeker draws the golf ball. There's Simpson again, draws the golf ball. Sneds once again. He obviously draws it. I don't know what a lot of these. I think Davis Love drew the golf ball. Yeah, I don't really remember everybody and their shot shape, but I'm just telling you, like, here are 2 really notable drawers of the golf ball: Reed and Spieth. So do not feel discouraged by those that draw the golf ball. Like, just don't worry about it, because there's been success inside the top 10. Sure, we have a couple holes where fade is more beneficial than a draw, but in large, it's whatever shot shape you want. So I think that's why draws do work here pretty successfully. So kind of a boring course breakdown. If we, obviously if we saw more, we would then go into the golfers that do what their shot shape is, try to determine what our favorite play is based off that is, but we don't have that. So the next piece of information is to get into our salaries and past optimal lineups. So what I would do is go down here, look at our salaries. This is obviously the bucket system. If you are unaware of what this is, it's my way to break down a tournament. It analyzes the top 10 of any given tournament, any given year. And the reason that I look at the top 10 is if you want to win a GPP, you're going to have to nearly build the optimal lineup. But I'm always chasing the optimal lineup. So again, the only way to do that is to look at the top 10. And that's what we have here. So these columns here are all top 10 information. You see how many have, for as long as I have data. So my salaries go back to 2017. Since 2017, this is your count of how many golfers within these buckets finished inside the top 10. And I do rank them, so you can see what the ranking is over here. I don't want you guys to get caught up on that, though. Not yet, at least. We're just going to look at salaries and past optimal lineups. So I just want to show you what this is. let's go ahead and look at our first optimal lineup, and we'll go back to 2017. Basically, I'm looking again, every golfer inside the top 10. If I have the DraftKings information to show you the points scored, I would definitely provide that. For as it goes now, it's just showing you of the golfers finishing inside the top 10, what's the closest lineup to $50,000. That's basically at least my realistic optimal lineup, if not the optimal lineup. So what we have in 2017, two 10K golfers, three 7K golfers, and a 6K. So very stars and scrubs for this tournament. You can see there's some other 7Ks and 8Ks. So obviously I think the 7K range is going to be definitely the best range to choose from. But let's go ahead and check out 2018. So 2018, 49,900 for the optimal lineup. And you have 5 golfers finishing inside the top 5 in that optimal lineup, plus a $6,900 golfer in David Hearn. Now, maybe Nick Taylor scored more points than Hearn. Maybe, I guess we can't fit anybody else. Maybe Harris English or even Brett Stegmeyer or Michael Thompson in 11th place. But again, I'm looking at all top 10s. So again, very stars and scrubsy. Two 10K golfers, two 7Ks, and now two 6Ks with one really low 6K range. And again, that's 49,900. So far the trend is two 10K golfers, load up on your 7s and 6s, whatever your favorite ones are. Let's see if that continues going forward. 2019. I do have the winning lineup, and I do have points that go with it. I guess what I would have to say is you're just going to have to take my word for it because I don't have the points next to the names, which is unfortunate. So your winning lineup scored 692.5 points. It used 49,800. And it's all the golfers that are highlighted in blue right here. And I do have their points in here already. I'm not going to go over that. I just want to talk about the optimal lineup. It scored 631, so it was 40 points more than the winning lineup here. It used $49,800, and it consisted of the golfers that I'm highlighting here. Let's check out what the price tags are on this one. We have 11,000, 9, 8, 7, 7, 6. That is your traditional build lineup build when it comes to optimal lineups. So we usually see this more often than not in these tournaments. So that's really interesting to see that. But now that's another trend happening here. Definitely want 1.7, 110K plus, and 1.6. So let's see if 2020, which is our last year, we obviously will talk about this. This is different now. The optimal lineup is $46,800. You're using 46.8. If you know me, I always try to get as close to 50,000 as possible. So we'll look at a realistic optimal lineup. That's what I like to call it. Get it as close to $50,000 as possible, because when you leave money on the table, you're actually inviting more combinations of lineups that can actually be built. And that becomes way more complicating. It becomes way tougher to determine, which golfer is the best one or not. So we'll look at that. Again, each of your golfers highlighted in blue belongs to the winning lineup. You can see it's the $5 Drive the Green contest. It scored 685.5. The optimal scored 759. So almost, 70 points, 74 points greater than that GPP winning lineup. And that one consisted of a 9K, 2 8s, a 7, and 2 6s. Now, you will obviously know me. Let's build a realistic optimal lineup, which obviously is going to be using 11,000, 9, 6, probably 2 8s. Can we? We cannot. Well, let's see here. Maybe we can. Can we go with Tyler Duncan? 49.8. Let's see what that actually scores out to be. 740. So that's 19 points behind. It still beats the winning lineup here, but let's see if we can do a little better than that. Maybe we get rid of that one and we do the 2 7s. That's 50,400. That doesn't work, but we could add Zach Johnson. 108. Nah, we want Denny McCarthy. 117. So that's 49,700. This equals 758. 1 point behind the optimal lineup. And I guess we can see that, right? It's pretty clear. So either way, here's your optimal lineup, your realistic optimal lineup. It used an 11K golfer, a 9K golfer, 8K, 7, 6, 6. So really, you definitely want a 6K golfer in your lineup. You want an 11K golfer and a 7K. Start your lineups with those three and then build out from there. Obviously, Jim Herman, $6,100. We saw another low 6K golfer in the optimal lineup. Where was it? DA Points was a $6,100 golfer. Was 2017 another 6? Nope, that was a high 6. So really, it's kind of mixing and matching your 6s. You know, if you do want two 6K golfers, do a high 6 and a low 6. So basically, how I determine that is 6,500 and up is your high 6, 6,400 and down is your low 6. So I definitely would think that way. And then when we look at our summaries here, you can kind of see how that's rated out over those 4 years. So your worst bucket is that low 6K range. Your next bucket that's the best would be that high 6.5 or that high 6K range. The next worst one is actually your 9K range, followed by 8K, and then your top two are 10K and 7K. Obviously, we talked a lot about 10 and 7s. Really interesting to see that 6.5K not being one of your top buckets, but it's only 2 points off of your 10K and your 8K. I guess that also applies with your 9K golfers as well. So either way, I think it's a good way to go about it. Now, here's the tricky part. When we look at how many golfers are in that bucket this year, sometimes it's difficult to try to find the proper golfer, especially when it comes to, I mean, that's obvious, right? But I'm basically saying in your 6K range, you have 91 total golfers in your entire 6K range. Again, there's a 156 man field, so the majority of your golfers come from here. You have a 2.4% success rate of your high 6s finishing inside the top 10 and 1.89. Now that's looking at the entire 6K range, both the upper 6 and the lower 6, looking at the bucket itself and determining what's the success rate of finding a top 10 golfer within that range or within those ranges. Not very high. 2.4, this is really literally looking for a needle in the haystack. Same thing applies for that low 6. So high risk, obviously. Your 6K range usually is high risk, but the best thing about the 6K range, we can usually just block golfers from even entering our player pools. Like there's going to be somewhere between 20 to 30 of these golfers that you can just auto X and not play whatsoever. Part of playing the 6K range is embracing the volatility though. So I usually like to randomize my 6K. I never like to play anyone more than 10%. That's kind of my advice to you guys. So that would be it for our salaries and past optimal lineups. So now we're going to get really down deep into the bucket system. I mean, we kind of did with the salaries here, but we're going to start with our last year bucket, and I'm just going to make this less confusing for you guys. We'll just filter out the other ones. So obviously the bucket system looks, I mean, the whole bucket system in general, I use 6 stat categories. We look at last year's stats, last week's stats, course history, recent form, salaries, and strokes gained stats. I all put them into buckets. And to me, it's the best way to determine which types of golfers you need to play in your lineup. Again, in order to hit the optimal lineup, it's not going to be, blatantly obvious for us and who we should play. We're going to need to find 4 kind of blatantly obvious plays, but then we need to find 2 other ones. And usually the bucket system does a good job of highlighting those golfers or highlighting the types of golfers you need to play. So when we look at last year, we're looking at last year's finishes. So I have your finishing ranges here, 1 to 20, and it goes by every 20 after that. And then I also have the ranking. I only want to talk about the top 3 ranked buckets in each of these stat categories. So first one, obviously, we're talking about last year's. Your number 1 bucket, golfers who did not play. Now, one of the things I like to look at is your min-max, and basically that's it's a better way of saying how what's the least amount of golfers we've seen every single year finish inside the top 10? What's the most we've ever seen? And this is a very high success bucket. I shouldn't say success. We see it quite a bit inside the top 10. A minimum of 2, meaning, again, we've seen at least 2. So this is your number 1 bucket, golfers who did not play last year. Now, I do kind of have a little caveat to go with that. This year, we only have 44 golfers in that bucket. On average, we see 75. So we're a full 30 down. This looks like it was a high frequency bucket prior to whatever field change that we have this week. I think a lot of that has to do with COVID and there not being a Korn Ferry promotion, like graduation into the PGA Tour. If you're not aware, usually the PGA removes like 60 to 75 golfers from their tour every single year who do not qualify for the next year. So obviously the FedEx Cup playoffs are coming up. This is your last tournament, by the way. Before that, 75 usually get cut, and then a new 75 comes in. I shouldn't say 75. It's probably somewhere between 50 and 60, if I'm being honest. But you have a whole new influx of golfers coming in. I think you at least have 25 that graduate from the Korn Ferry Tour that come here. And that changes up, the makeup of each tour. So those 25 golfers probably never played any of the tournaments that are on the schedule. So that's why we would see more in this bucket. But we don't. We actually see 30 less than average. Guarantee you that's going to affect how this looks like, when building lineups. I'm still projecting around 3 golfers finishing inside the top 10. But in all reality, I'm only reserving 193 spots in 100 lineups that I build. Meaning, really, if you put 1 in every single lineup, that means a max of 2. Essentially, a max of 2 can be in those lineups. So either way, I'm projecting somewhere, but I think you want to lower your expectations. I'd say definitely start with 1 golfer who didn't play last year and go from there. Like, I wouldn't put 3 right away. I wouldn't put 2 right away either. Just put 1. And then obviously if you like another one, feel free to. It's kind of what the bucket system allows you. It gives you that freedom to do that. Our second bucket are those that top 20'd the year before. So this would be your good course history guys, basically. We do have 18 in the field this year. We usually see 14. And the strength of field is looking good. That's another thing that I've been keeping track, is the strength of field for this tournament. We do not have that minimum of greater than 0. So we've seen this strike out before. So perhaps, again, lower your expectations. I do project around 2, but I'm only reserving 150 spots out of 100. Basically, it's 150 out of 600 because 100 lineups, 6 spots you can put in a lineup, 6 times 100, 600. So 152 out of 600, meaning, if you do play one every single time, half your lineups will have 2 golfers from that bucket. Half your lineups will only have 1. So, I think I'm looking at 1. But either way, last bucket to talk about, your 80 plus. These are your missed cuts. Usually your missed cuts are your third bucket in any given tournament. Missed cuts, you shouldn't worry about a missed cut from the year before or even a missed cut from the week before. Usually you'll find 1 or 2 of those golfers inside the top 10. And this is just showing you can have a little bit of success or a little bit of confidence in doing that. Usually we see 35 from this bucket in this tournament. We have 55. So we're 16 players over that. Meaning I think there's a good chance we'll have at least 1. And that's kind of what I'm projecting for both maximum ownership as well as just what I project inside the top 10. So here's top 3 buckets when it comes to last year. Let's just get a quick idea. I'm not really going to go over the golfers that are in each of those buckets, but we're looking at last year's 1, 2, and 3. Here are your last year 1 buckets. Again, these are golfers who did not play last year. And you can see it's a pretty good group of golfers. So if you do like any of the golfers you see on screen, I say go for it. Looking at our last year 2 buckets, a little bit smaller of a group, but I mean, like Webb Simpson. These are your top 20s from last year, by the way. Jim Herman's in here. He's $6,900. We have a lot of our lower 6K. Remember, we do need a 6K golfer in our lineup, as well as a 7K. So maybe you find it in here. I'm looking more like a Webb. I actually like a lot of the guys here, 9K and above. I mean, I like all of them. So some choices need to be made there. We'll figure that out in the strategy video. Let's go ahead and look at our last year threes. And these are your golfers who missed the cut last year. So Charles Schwartzel is kind of the top there for salary. This reminds me a lot of the bucket from the WGC last week, where one of them, and I think it was actually course history, the course history bucket 3 golfers. Maybe it was actually last year bucket 3. It could have been, honestly, where we didn't have any golfers over 8K. Now you can see we do have 2. We have an 8K and an 8-1, but literally it's almost the same as last week. And we had 2 or 3, I think we had 3 golfers from this bucket finish inside the top 10. So I'm not saying that's going to be a corollary over here. It's just kind of an interesting observation. Meaning, I mean, if you like some of these guys, don't be afraid to play them, especially with their missed cut from last year. I probably would stay away from a lot of these guys down here in the 6K range. But as I say that, we might find one of our 6-1, $6,100 golfers who win the tournament down here. I doubt it, but hey, we have over the last 5 years, 4 years, 2 golfers, 2019, 20, have been in that $6,100 range. So it's possible. It definitely, like, the odds, well, I don't think the odds are really, like, the realistic odds are not in your favor, but the fact that it's a 50% rate, it's pretty good. So those are your top 3 last year buckets with the golfers that you see. Again, I'm not going to talk about a lot of these guys. I don't want this video to be extremely long, but I do want to be thorough with it. The next bucket, I think that's just natural to come by, are our last week buckets. Last year, last week kind of go well together. So let's go with this one. And much like what it's a carbon copy of the last year buckets. Your number 1 bucket for last week, golfers, those who did not play. On average, we see 97 of them. This year, 48. So my rankings are based off of raw numbers, just the frequencies that it happens, not the success percentages or anything like that. There were 43 instances dating back to 2013, where this bucket is finished inside the top 10. That is 30 more, basically, than any of the other buckets. But that's also telling you guys, on average, we usually see 97. Now, there's a huge discrepancy with that. Last week, we had 2 events. So definitely more golfers playing in this tournament had the ability to play last week. You had your WGC event, which allowed 66 golfers. And then you also had your Barracuda Championship, which I believe was a 130-man field. I could be a little wrong, but either way, nearly 200 golfers played last week. That obviously is going to lower this number quite a bit. I still like it, primarily because 25% of the strength of field comes from this bucket, meaning some good golfers who did not play last week are going to be in this bucket. Now, it doesn't give me the greatest confidence because it is lowered by half, essentially. I think it's half on the button, pretty darn close. But I'm still projecting 2 and have a max ownership of 127 spots out of 600. So again, if I play 1 in every lineup, 27 of those lineups might have 2 in it. One thing I always forget to bring up, frequency rate means of all the years I've been tracking this, what is the success rate that each year it's been inside the top 10? And obviously 87.5 means probably 1 year it didn't happen. And obviously you can see that with the minimum of 0. Our number 2 bucket, those who topped 20 last week. Here's the other thing. On average, we see 9. This year we have 24. Again, last week was a weird week. We had 2 tournaments. Again, 200 golfers in total in both of those tournaments. We're bound to have a bunch of finishes from those, from the top 20 bucket. Usually we don't. Every tournament usually has 14 or less. We have 24 in that bucket this week. The success rate is high. I imagine the success rate's going to be high once again. We have seen at least one inside the top 10 every single year. So, you know, even with an average of 9.75, we still see one. So the fact that we have 24, I'd say round up, you know, golfers from this bucket. I mean, I'm projecting 2.9, close to 3, but I'm only reserving 178 spots out of 600. So again, you know, we're looking at a max of 2 that I would probably be selecting, but do not be, you know, surprised if we see a bunch from this bucket. And then our third bucket, golfers who missed the cut last week. Now, we don't have that with the WGC event. There was no cut there. We do have it with the Barracuda, and you can kind of see that's where most of our golfers are coming from. On average, we usually see 23 come over here who've missed the cut. This year we have 35. And it's not a very high strength of field bucket. I mean, only 13 points are going towards that, which is 4% of the strength of field. That's not good. In fact, I'm only averaging 1 from this bucket and only reserving 62 spots out of 600 for it. So that means I can't put it in all of my 100 lineups. So this projection of 1, you know, I'd bump down, but I'm projecting 1 inside the top 10. Doesn't mean we want to play him regardless. You can see what the other buckets look like with the projections and my max ownerships. So you can see the last week 4 and 5 a little bit better. And you can see the strength of field is also a little bit better, as well as how many are in that bucket. So maybe we just skip last week 3s. We probably don't talk about them, right? Yeah, I think we just skip. We talk about 4 and 5 to go with 1 and 2. So why don't we do that? Last week 1s. Decent. Starts with Russell Henley at 9,400 and then goes to Bubba at 9,000. Again, these are golfers who did not play last week. So they weren't invited to the WGC and probably too good enough to be in the Barracuda. Probably not, but let's just pretend that's the case. I think this is a great bucket to choose golfers from. A lot of hard choices, if I'm being honest here. And you can see on one page, we're still in the 7K range. So there are a bunch of golfers to choose from here. So if you like any of these guys, don't be afraid to play them. And again, probably looking around at least 1, but probably up to 3, close to 3. Looking at last week 2s, these are your golfers who, I already forgot, top 20 last week. Remember, we're going to have a bunch of them. So don't be afraid to play these. I mean, you could probably build a lineup with 4 of these golfers in it. We have 4 of our 6 10K golfers in this bucket. That's not a surprise to me. Remember, Will Zalatoris does need to win this week in order to be invited to the playoffs next week, which is insane. But that's what he needs. Not saying that should be the reason you play him, but just there's a little bit of added motivation. But yeah, this bucket's another good bucket to choose from, although it does go into the 6K range quite quickly. And there are some good values down here in the 6K range. So if you do like one of the golfers here, or 2 or 3, play them all. We're going to skip bucket 3 and go to 4, which is your 20 to 40 range from last week. Now we have our last 2 10K golfers. This one drops to 6K pretty quickly. I think I'm projecting like 1.7 golfers finishing inside the top 10, and I think I'm reserving like 114 spots, or somewhere between 114 and 130 out of 600, meaning at least 1 will be inside in my lineups. I'm okay with that to some extent, but Patrick Reed has been playing every week dating back to the Open Championship, which is not good. That's a lot of travel. He might be in a good spot now because he didn't really have to travel that far from Memphis, Tennessee to Greensboro, North Carolina. But I don't know. I think that's a lot of fatigue, if I'm being honest. Kokrak I like. Harmon I like. Scott, I mean, here's the conundrum here. This guy for me played so poorly last week. Sure, he got 36th place, and I guess he did heat up on Saturday. Okay, I'm going to take it back. He did heat up on Saturday, Sunday, but for the most part, it was a very bad showing of him last week. But I think you got to shake that, right? We can't really be biased. The bucket system does not allow biases. So, yeah, Scott definitely has a chance, and his Bermuda stats look pretty good. I'm not going to talk about a lot of these golfers. So, yeah, if you do like some of these guys, definitely think about it. And then our last bucket, 5. Usually we never talk about 5s, but fact of the matter is this is a decent bucket, decent strength of field. This is your 40 to 60 range. Those are your finishing spots from the week before. Fleetwood played in the WGC event last week. 46 is not a good spot. In fact, I don't even remember him playing any good golf. Same goes with Sung Jae, but these could be bounce back spots for him. And pretty darn good Bermuda stats, which I forgot to mention earlier. We'll go over in this video. And then it drops pretty fast. I mean, 8,000 to 77 to 74, 72, 7 to 6. So like it gets to 6 real fast. Yeah, I don't mind picking one golfer from here. And really, I'll be cheering for Fleetwood. Sung Jae's number 2 in my model, so I don't mind Sung Jae. But again, we're not talking about all these golfers. So let's move on to the next bucket, which for me, course history makes sense. Our number 1 bucket, usually this is week in, week out, the same thing. That 40 to 60 range. So an average finishing position between 40 and 60. Usually we see 35. This week we see 52. We have 30% of our strength of field points in this bucket, so that's really good. Success rate 6.98. Projecting around 3. Max ownership of 181 spots out of 600. And we've seen a minimum of 1 inside the top 10 every single year. So yeah, I do like this bucket. I think it's a good bucket to go with. So if you're looking at course history and you're worried, don't be. 40 to 60 is your range you want to select from. The second one is actually did not plays. And much like what we talked about in the last year bucket, we're not going to see many this week. And really, it looks like a volume-driven bucket. My projection is pretty low. So we're going to skip this bucket. We're not going to talk about this one. We're going to go to our 3s, which are your top 20s. And this year, we have 7 in the field. On average, we see 9. And we have around 25% of the strength of field points going into this. We see it every single year inside the top 10. 21% success rate. Projections not very high. I'm projecting at least 1. We want at least 1 from this bucket. So we'll definitely look at that when we get there. I think the natural one to go to would be 4s, but you can see the projections aren't that great. Nearly the same amount in this field that we usually see on average. I think we want to talk about, I guess, course history 5s, that 60 to 80 range, which, if I'm being honest, the rankings usually go 1, 2, 3. It's usually those middle buckets to talk about. So obviously, it makes sense. But let's see here. We're going to talk about buckets 1, 3, and 5. Those are the buckets we're talking about. We're not going to go 4s. 1, 3, and 5. And 5 is that 60 to 80 range. On average, we see 23. This year, we have 37. 16% of a strength of field's not super great, but I am projecting around 2, max ownership of 119. I usually just time this by 0.1, or just look at the 10% mark of this, which would be, I guess it's not 10%, right? No, it would be 10%. 10% of 119 is going to be basically 12. So, or 1.2. Where am I getting at with this? Geez. Yeah, 1.2. I'm projecting in my lineups, I'll at least have 1 in all of my lineups. Wow. Sorry. Brain fart. Anyways, let's take a look at our course history buckets. Again, we're looking at 1s, we're looking at 3s, and we're looking at 5s. So your course history 1s, I'm not going to talk about all these guys, but you can see led by Hideki Matsuyama and Jason Kokrak and some other 10K golfers that we talked about already. You have Fleetwood in there, Henley, pretty good mix of golfers. Going to our course history 3s, actually, let me just scroll through all of these so you guys can see. Pause the video. If you like some of these guys, obviously write them down. or select them in DraftKings or FanDuel, whatever, and go with that route. Course history 3's pretty small. This is your best course history, by the way. You can see, I mean, I'm not a huge fan of Chris Baker this week, but everybody above Chris Baker is in play and might be a good choice. Maybe not so much Matthew Wolff. I'm going to be reserved on him, but really Na, Kisner, Sungjae, Reed, and Simpson. And just to remind you guys, I am projecting at least one finishing from this bucket inside the top 10. So there you go. I think you can start your lineups here. Pick one of these guys that you like and go from there. And then our course history 5s starts with Adam Scott. This is your 60 to 80 range. So obviously, I think he has one finish and it's not good. 63, I don't know, maybe. But either way, bad course history as we would normally see it. But again, don't feel afraid to pick golfers from this bucket. I do like some of these names that I see. I like Power, Munoz, Vegas, Gooch. A lot of people will be on Gooch this week because a lot of the touts are talking about Gooch. Shank wouldn't be a terrible play. Jones wouldn't. I'm not going to talk about everybody, but yeah, good bucket to choose from here. And really, that's going to be it for the course history buckets. Let's look at our recent form buckets. Your number one bucket, that 40 to 60 range. So those coming in with okay recent form, as this would show, your number one bucket. We usually see 58. We have 49 this week. Nearly 25% of our strength of field is coming from this bucket, so it's not super good. But we have seen on average 2 golfers from this bucket finish inside the top 10 every single year dating back to 2013. And in fact, we have at least one finish inside the top 5 every single year. I think that trend probably sticks true, especially with how many I'm projecting, max ownership. It all looks good. Our number 2 bucket is that 20 to 40 range. So now we're kind of inching closer to better recent form. Still not great. On average, we see 19. We have 31 in this bucket this year. 50% of our strength of field is coming from this bucket. Not only do we see at least one in the top 10 every year, but we see one inside the top 5, projecting around 4.64 inside the top 10, but I'm only reserving nearly 300. So I'm probably going to be flirting with 2 or 3 golfers from this bucket inside or building my lineups from. And again, we're only selecting from 31, so that might be pretty easy. Our third ranked bucket, that 60 to 80 range. On average, we see 52. We have 49, so that's basically right on par. We don't get to see that at least one every single year. And you know what? I'm projecting one inside the top 10, but I'm only reserving 87 spots out of 600 for this bucket. So it's not really that great. In fact, your main buckets are 20 to 40 recent form or 40 to 60. Even that 1 to 20, we have 4 this year. We have on average 2.29. And there's a 25% success rate, meaning you might get one finishing inside the top 10. But I'm not even projecting one. We only have 8.75% of our strength of field coming from there. Which, this is a whole new thing that I've added, the strength of field. I like it. I'm hoping this provides a little bit more clarity of which buckets to choose from, which buckets to trust. But if you want to play the percentage game, 25% times 4 is 1. So chances are we might see 1 out of that bucket. And why don't we just talk about all of them? So we'll look at 1 through 4. Your recent form 1s. Starts with Will Zalatoris. So again, this is your 40 to 60 range of recent form. Zalatoris kind of on your worst recent form, but either way, Zalatoris, Wolff, Woodland, Fowler, Munoz, there are a lot of good golfers to choose from in this bucket. So hopefully you can find who you like here. I'll scroll down a little bit so you guys can pause the video and take a screenshot if you want, or select the golfers that you like, that you see. It's a pretty big bucket. Probably cross off some of these guys before even selecting anybody from this bucket. But yeah, probably select one to 3 golfers from this one. Looking at recent form 2s, obviously, you know, this is the big bucket to choose from. I I think this is the projected 4, if I remember correctly. Yeah. Reserving around 300 spots out of 600. So yeah, I'm liking this bucket, and for good cause. Like, you have a lot of the good 10K golfers up here. Most of our 9K ranges here, if not all. Same applies, well, 3 8K golfers. So a lot of high price golfers, very few 6K. Maybe this is the reason you play some of these 6K golfers, maybe not. But yeah, I think selecting golfers from this bucket is definitely the way to go. So obviously we talked about, I think the bucket right before this, the course history bucket, 4s, 3s. I don't remember. The one where it was small, but yet the success rate was high. Definitely start there, build lineups from there, and maybe they're a part of the golfers here. And then come here and select 1 or 2 to fill in, the lineup. So I think that'd be a good spot to get to. We can look at our 3s, which is that 60 to 80 range. Not very good, but hey, if there's a reason to play Siwoo Kim, this would be the reason. Same goes with Kevin Streelman. So do not feel afraid to use any of these golfers, because this bucket rates out pretty decent. And then let me scroll down so you guys can see the whole list of golfers. Very large group of golfers that I'm probably just going to X out. Some of these low 6K golfers, just no chance. I don't care to play them. You know what? Let me go really quickly back to 2020. What was Jim Herman's? Was 80, his recent form. And then where's DA points? His was 73. So actually, this bucket had one of those golfers in it, but also one that had 80 or worse. I wouldn't really go that route. Don't really care, but maybe this is where we find our 6K golfer. Maybe it's a Ben Taylor. Probably not, but maybe. Who knows? And then the last recent form bucket, like I said, talking about those 4s. There are only 4 of these. Again, 25% rate. Maybe it's just Louis. Maybe that's the no-brainer, the one that we choose from. Just select Louis Oosthuizen. If not, Charles Schwartzel, I don't mind. Actually, I don't mind any 4 of these golfers. Really high-quality golfers in this bucket. So, yeah, don't feel afraid to play any of these guys. And that's going to cover the recent form buckets. Let's talk really quickly about the strokes gained buckets, because we already went over the salaries. We don't have to go over those. These are static buckets. If you've been with me before, you know this already. Strokes gained 1, every strokes gained stat's positive, and this is season-long stats. So we're looking off the tee, approach, around the green, putting. If around the green or approach are negative, they will then fall in the strokes gained 2 bucket from this one, I should say. Strokes gained 3, negative putting plus positive off the tee. Strokes gained 4, negative off the tee, positive putting. Strokes gained 5, negative off the tee, negative putting. And then strokes gained 6, no data, no strokes gained data. So either way, when we look at this, it's pretty even. When you look at all the projections, you look at all the max ownerships, obviously we have a higher success rate of strokes gained 1 golfers. On average, we see 7. We have 10 this year. 25% of our strength of field goes there. But then we look at strokes gained 3s. Pretty similar to our strokes gained 1s. We have 44 this year, when on average 41. And we have, again, nearly 25%. It's almost a carbon copy. There are just more golfers in this bucket to choose from. And then strokes gained 4, believe it or not, also very close to that 25% clip. So those are your 3 buckets you really want to choose from. Just kind of goes to show that any stat, any strokes gained stats are going to be okay at this tournament. Whether you want to find your approach players or off the tee guys, it really doesn't matter. Your good putters, it doesn't matter. And let me just kind of further prove that point. So when we look at like 2020, let me scroll up. And we look at all the strokes gained data just to prove this point. And we look at just the top 10. Look at all those that have positive off the tee. Quite a bit of them. There are 1, 2, 3, 4 golfers that have negative off the tee. When we look at putting, let's highlight all the positive putting. So there you go. I don't know why I was doing that. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 positive putters. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 negative putters. And how about approach? Approach is usually the stat everybody's looking at. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 golfers having positive approach. But guess what? Your top 3, negative approach. So really looking at approach stats, at least for 2020, doesn't look too solid. Looking at 2019, can we see the same thing? I mean, I'll leave it to you guys, but again, we're looking at top 10s, approach. Now we have 3 positives, 1 negative in Siwoo, some more positives, some negatives. So this one's actually a more positive approach type of year. And then 2018, top 3 are positive. Most of these are positive as well. So yeah, you probably do want to find your positive approach golfers, but mix in a negative one if you want to find the optimal lineup, that is. And just looking at all of the negative ones, just the 2, I guess, in that year. Yeah, let's see. This one actually had more negative off the tee golfers than positive. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4. So yeah, this one actually had more negative off the tee. So yeah, I guess approach, definitely a stat you want to be looking at. You're not going to get that with my strokes gained data. With those buckets, I should say. It does make me want to rethink how I'm doing those. So yeah, I mean, strokes gained 1, definitely want to play those. Can't really figure that out with strokes gained 3 because I don't include the positive approach. But either way, don't sleep on positive off the tee, because you obviously see our number. Well, I shouldn't even say our number 1 bucket. It's a static bucket, but it would rank out as our 2, and it has the highest success rate of finishing inside the top 10. So yeah, definitely try to find golfers that have all positive approach. And then from there, this would actually be positive off the tee as well, but negative putting, and then negative off the tee, positive putting. But probably find your positive approach guys in there. That's the best way to put it. So long way to get there, but that's what I would say. The last thing I want to talk about before ending this video, looking at grass stats. Let's go ahead and hide this. I'm sorry I didn't hide it earlier. It would make things a little easier to see. Looking at our top Bermuda golfers, you can see Webb Simpson ranks out number 1. So this is sorted from top to bottom. I've highlighted your top 20 golfers. Matthew Wolff is your 20th ranked golfer down here at the bottom. But here are your top 20s. So obviously do with that as you will. I'm not going to make any proclamations here, but I probably will grab 2 or 3 golfers from the top 20 here. Usually we see success in doing something like that. Here is your top 10 Bermuda percentage, which is really your success rate for top 10 finishes. Webb on Bermuda, 40% all the way. And then it's Rose and Fleetwood. Obviously, we talked about Fleetwood. Very interesting. I think I do want to play him. Rose didn't help his 2021 Bermuda. We talked about him in the WGC FedEx last week. Poor Bermuda stats didn't really help with a no-cut event, by the way. So Rose, not quite there. He is in some buckets that we want to choose him out of, but probably going to stay away from him, if I'm being honest. Yeah, and I'm not going to talk about all of these golfers either. Whatever you see on the screen, if you like it, obviously take a note and maybe select some of those golfers. This is a better stat to go with, the 2021 Bermuda stats. So again, Webb up top. For as bad as he's been playing recently, he finished 15th last week, which was a Bermuda course. Again, that was a no-cut event, but still keeps him right around his average, which is super good. Matsuyama just dropped his by finishing 2nd last week, so keep that in mind. Bubba, believe it or not, has pretty decent 2021 Bermuda stats, and I do like him. Same goes with Louis Oosthuizen. So here you go. This is probably a better selection to choose from. In fact, I'm going to say this, select 3 golfers that you see on the board. So out of these 20 golfers, select 3. Brennan Todd, by the way, number 20. And that's what we have for our top Bermuda golfers for the field. We're going to get out of here. Oh man, I was going to say we're going to get out of here under an hour, but it is exactly 1 hour. It's all right. We went through a lot of stuff and I think pretty thoroughly. So hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Let me know who your favorite plays are in the comment section. I'd like to know, which bucket do you find most important? Share it with me in the comment section, or you can message me. I find that stuff very intriguing. A lot of you guys do reach out to me, and kind of go over your favorite plays or ask me what my favorite plays are. You're more than welcome to do that. So one thing I actually forgot to announce. So I've had an Instagram for a long time. I just have not utilized it. And if I'm being honest, I'm really not utilizing it. My girlfriend will be. So we're still going to post all my videos on there. We'll post some of my favorite plays. We'll also post like prize picks plays and stuff like that through there. So if that's an avenue you want to follow me at, it's at SweetSpotDFS. So yeah, we'll include that. I'll add it in the description where you can follow me there. So yeah, you can do that. Again, prize picks link is in the description as well. So if you have not signed up for that, obviously click that link or copy the URL, paste it into your URL, and sign up using the code SweetSpot. And that's all I have for you guys. So with that being said, thank you guys for watching. Please leave a like, comment, subscribe, all of that good stuff. And we'll see you in the strategy video tomorrow. All right, bye.